Hello and welcome to AFcast. I'm your host Malcolm, and today I am here with Bryce A.
Hi.
And we are going to be talking about silent protagonists versus voiced protagonists. So to kind of start us off, is that we've had plenty of brilliant silent and voice protagonists, but we are going to look into what benefits and deficits they both have. And we aren't here to say that one is better than the other, and make your decision for you. Like whether or not voice protagonists are better or silent protagonists are better. I personally like one or the other depending on the game. But some people like to choose whether they like silenced people more than voiced people. But it's all, honestly, it's really just your opinion. I'm just here to point out some benefits and deficits of both of them. So I'm going to start us off with silent protagonist. So actually, before we get into that, I've kind of split both the silent and the voice protagonists into both good and bad. And to kind of describe a silent protagonist is they are like silent throughout the entire game, except maybe some noises like grunts or moans or just any non word noises, honestly, like frustration noises even. And some people think that a silent protagonist is the cause of lazy developers. It's really not. It can be smart a lot of the times as well. It's just it all depends on the situation. So to start us off with our first good reasoning, being silent allows you to do a build your own adventure type thing. So kind of what I mean by that is so essentially if you have a silent protagonist, a lot of the time they don't really have much of a backstory. And this kind of allows you to build your own backstory to your character, kind of build your own character in your mind. And there's infinite possibilities of that. So you can make them this person who never really was good at anything and rises to fame or whatever, depending on the game. Yeah, okay. Or you could. It allows more possibilities for who your character can be. And so that's kind of what I mean by it's a build your own adventure. So a second good reasoning for a silent protagonist is that it kind of allows you to feel like you are that character more than if you played a voice character. So essentially what I mean by this is that you can kind of place yourself in that person's shoes, especially if they're older than you. So you can picture this as it being your future, being this really cool future soldier or something like that. I don't really know. But essentially it allows you to just, I guess...
feel like a badass.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. The third good reason for a silent protagonist is that being silent can actually be really powerful. And a couple examples of what I have here is kind of like Dead Space 1 or Doom, where they don't really speak. They literally just run around kicking aliens' butts constantly and just they're not talking ever. And actually, I feel like that...
Master Chief, for the most part, too, is pretty silent.
He's pretty silent, but he still has a lot of voiced lines.
Each Halo game, I felt like he started to talk a lot more, but Halo 1, he didn't really talk much.
Yeah. Halo... Wait, I'm trying to figure out now. Yeah, Halo 1. Yeah, Halo 1 was kind of like a beginning and end talk situation, but during the missions, instead of at the beginning and the end of them, it was mostly Cortana speaking in your HUD. That was about it.
But it wasn't him.
Yeah, but it wasn't him. And if a character that never speaks suddenly during a game, if a character that never speaks during a game suddenly speaks, then that also can be a very powerful thing. And that comes from...
This comes to movies as well.
Yeah.
For instance, Bumblebee and Transformers.
Yeah, that's actually a really good example. But it's so much more powerful, especially when it's a character like Bumblebee who had to more so learn the language. But also if it's a character who stays silent the entire time, maybe because of a bad experience or something they had with another team of theirs, but then they feel comfortable with the team or something like that, and then they finally actually speak to them, that can also be a powerful thing. So being a silent protagonist doesn't necessarily have to be your character either. It could actually be someone that's alongside of you during the game. So now I'm going to get on to the bad reasonings for having a silent protagonist. So uh, I don't think this goes for all characters, because some developers have done a good job at this, but it's harder to develop a character, and like sometimes that's on purpose, and like kind of just going back to the build your own adventure thing. That's why it's more on purpose, just to feel like you are that character a bit more, that you can create that character to be whoever you want to be, or maybe they're a special agent who just doesn't talk, but
Division?
yeah, division. But yeah, it's a lot harder to develop a character when they can't speak, or if someone has to speak for you, it makes them seem a bit less powerful as well. Um, and that kind of moves us on to the second reasoning why a silent protagonist can be bad, is because sometimes silent protagonists have a narrator or a person over the comms that speaks for them. And this kind of goes for Cortana as well, for Halo and Master Chief, except for they actually did a pretty good mix of that. Whereas like during the missions and stuff, she's basically just talking about the next objective, and like why you're doing that objective. And sometimes you'd even speak during those times as Master Chief, but then during the actual cutscenes, the beginning and end, you will have an actual conversation when it's not just objective driven. So that part is a bit better, but some games where it is solely that whatever voice is in your head or narrator is talking for you, that can actually be pretty bad, and cause you to feel more disconnected with the character instead of more connected. So number 3 for the bad reasoning, or the third bad reason for silent protagonists being bad,
Oh,
is that
to this one for sure.
what?
I said I could add points to this one for sure.
You want to read it out then?
So it's that you're almost forced to do what someone tells you because you're not speaking, so you can't be like, talk back to them. You can't be like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet has that. And also another bad reason for silent characters is, sorry, is that,
So a fourth reasoning.
yeah, that too, actually. Because I feel like this just goes together, everything. Is that, for instance, a game, Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet, your main character you play as doesn't speak at all. But you'll see people talk to him and be like, and then they'll understand what your character said, even though there's no, like, signs of what they say. But yet, here's the thing, too, is that they don't give you a full breakdown, but you can choose what your character says, but your character doesn't actually speak, and it ruins, like, a lot of the, what's the word?
Immersion.
Sure, I don't know what that means, but sure.
Kind of just like connection to the
Yeah.
game. Yeah. So that's also another good reason. So now we are actually going to move on to voice protagonists now. And so for voice protagonists, obviously they are talking and giving their opinion on the matters at hand. And that is actually one good reason for why, is because they can actually create an argument. They can actually oppose a command or something like that. Actually, one really powerful thing from Halo 4 is when he denied the captain of Infinity that, like, to take Cortana away when she was going rampant. And that was really powerful when he was just like yelling at Master Chief, and Master Chief's just saying calm, just saying no. Like, it's just a firm argument no. Like, you can't get that from a silent protagonist. I mean, I guess you can have them just standing still staring at them, but that's not as powerful. It's kind of stupid. It's kind of funny. But yeah. And a second good reason is that it actually still can be a choose your own adventure. And what I mean by that is that there's actually a lot of newer games recently where it has almost a morale system, or even not even just a morale system, but things that can just cause different voice lines.
Pretty much every Telltale game.
Yeah, actually, because you can actually choose what you say. You can choose out of a series of 4 options or something like that of what your character says, and that can actually become your adventure type situation, just in a different way as to a silent protagonist. Whereas where you can build your character, this just allows you to kind of give your character the voice that you want them to have. Reason number 3 for voice protagonists being good is that they usually have a more developed character. They're usually more fleshed out, and like the world almost becomes more developed as well. It's a lot harder to do that with the silent protagonist. You like with when it comes to silent protagonist, you need to find other means in order to build a world around you. Um, and this can obviously go visually, but not only that, but you actually need to describe your world. You need to build a foundation, build history, and that's really easy to do through the voice of a protagonist, especially when they're able to describe their own situation or something like that. But a lot of the time, this does come from other people that are playing with you, but guess what? They are voiced, and they are usually protagonists as well. And even if they're antagonists, they're still voiced. Like there's not really much information that people can relay when everything is just silent. I guess you could have text because there is stuff like super hot where there's no speaking, but it has like text of like what's going on type situation. Um, but that's I feel like that's still voiced in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's in text, but because that's kind of how older games were as well. They would be in text rather than actual like actor voices. Um, but it's actually kind of cool that recently, and not even just recently, like this has actually been going on for several years now. There's been a lot of famous actors that have been doing acting for game characters, both voice acting and actual like physical acting, and it makes I don't know, it just makes the game a lot more fun to play. It makes it more, it makes it just I don't really know how to describe it. It's just kind of cool when there's like popular actors that are in a video game of yours. It's just kind of cool and interesting.
That's one way to tell that they actually put a lot of time and effort into the games if they are putting the money to afford like famous people to voice and act for a video game.
Yeah, not even that, but like that it's going to be a more popular video game as well when they have more popular like celebrities come on to do acting. So, but yeah, that's besides the point. So our fourth reasoning for voiced actors, or not voiced actors, voice protagonists being good, is that they can really add a deep emotional connection to the player. And one game I want to bring up when it comes to this is The Last of Us. So The Last of Us, you get connected so much,
Oh.
and it's just like it's not even that. It's also thing like because The Last of Us they do a lot of character building, and a lot of that comes from just the conversations between what was it, Joel and Emily, I think was their names.
I thought it was Ellie.
Ellie, yes, it's
I
Ellie.
don't know the guy's name.
I think it's Joel. It's something with a J, I believe. But anyway, they do a lot of character building with just talking to each other because a lot of the rest of it is just killing zombies and moving from territory to territory, which also builds just the world up, but it's a lot of the emotional connection came between talking with each other.
You're right, it's Joel and Ellie.
Joel and Ellie. Okay. So I knew what his name was. He knew what her name was. All right, cool.
Because it's an awesome game. They're both badass.
They are. They're awesome. Um, and a lot of games like can kind of f up on this emotional connection, but still be good with the voice. It's just that it's a lot of it comes down to like sometimes it's a lot of jokes. Like there's some like awkward jokes that can be made that actually make you feel more relatable to the character or more emotionally connected. And that actually goes for the Spider-Man game that came out more recently. Like you've obviously got a state of crisis, like a state of crisis going on, and Spider-Man's making awkward jokes because he can't help himself, and it makes you become more attached to him, and then you also become attached to everyone around those characters as well, especially when they're voiced, in my opinion. But you can as well when they're silent, because that's actually a good because like for Metro Exodus, you've got Artyom, which is the main character that you play, and he's silent throughout the entire time. I felt deeply connected with all the other characters as well, and they did a really good job with that. But I also want to make another point about Metro Exodus a little bit later, after we move past this. Uh, but anyway,
That's a weird one. Yeah, the whole Metro series is a weird one to discuss about like the silent protagonists and stuff.
yeah. Um, so for reason number 5 for being good, when like the lines are made correctly, characters and the game will go to an entirely new level. And once again, I go back to Master Chief just saying no. Like that's not even a full out line. That's just a word, and it was powerful. It was no, no, no. It was just like it. I don't know. It just something about it hit me. But there's also other lines that can either make your character sound really cool, just like, um, but and then there's other lines where it's more funny, and it's just their lines just have to be perfect for the moment, and that's really hard for scripts to do sometimes. And I feel like some developers have taken the lazy way out and have made silent protagonists just to avoid the just the whole interaction between your protagonist and others in the more like conversational way.
Call of Duty.
Yep, Call of Duty. Well, it's not all the Call of Duties.
All right.
Actually, Call of Duty is really weird when it comes to that
That's
as well. I'm gonna be presenting some weird special cases a little bit later, so we'll get into this stuff a little just in a second. But now I'm gonna move on to the bad reasonings for voice protagonists. So for the first one, we have they can be really chatty.
Call of Duty.
Yeah, it's just that Call of Duty fits all of these right now.
More importantly, the Black Ops 1 and 2 era.
It's when you don't have time to like when it becomes too chatty when literally half your screen is filled with subtitles. There have been several games I've played where that has happened. And actually one of them's the first Halo. It only happened a couple of times, but it was really annoying, especially since I couldn't see half of my screen. But 2 is also just like I don't really care what you're saying right now. Just tell me where to go and how to do it, and I'll do it. Just
It
like
goes for a lot of games, even ones where the characters don't speak and they have text. I mean, obviously, but like if there's silent characters, like older games where it's just subtitles for speak, it gets in the way a bit.
yeah, and not even just subtitles. It's just like
In general,
yeah, it's annoying to just constantly hear someone talking behind your ear um, throughout a game when you're trying to enjoy the experience of that game.
talking about you, Cortana.
Yeah, just in the first Halo, in my opinion. I feel like there's been a couple other instances, but I felt like those instances were needed. Like when it's
That's
needed,
true.
I understand. But like I I can't remember what his name is now. But there's this one character that I just absolutely hated. Just because he would just talk so much. It was so frustrating. And it's like just let me enjoy the game, please. So games really need to find when they do voiced, they really need to find that perfect balance. So I would actually say that when it comes to voice, it's a bit harder when it comes to conversation. Uh, but when it comes to silent, it's harder to build a world, I guess. But sometimes that's on purpose. And either way, these can be powerful, either with powerful lines, or just with just I guess powerful movements and like physical, just anything when it comes to silent characters or just anything in general. Um, but another bad thing I just want to mention real quick before we head into these special cases is that lines can be sketchy sometimes. And I'm not just talking like about like weird lines that don't really make any sense or that are confusing and aren't well written. No, there's some racist stuff, there's some misogynistic stuff. There's yeah,
And then there's some Captain Obvious moments in a lot of games too. It's like it
oh
tells
my
you what to do
gosh.
when there's already like, yes, I'm going and I'm doing it now, and they're like, do this.
I've had games tell me to turn left when that's like the only option, and it's like, really? I had no idea.
No.
But yeah. All right, so that was our case for voice protagonists. So now to move on to some of the special cases. This obviously
All right.
isn't all of them because there's a lot of games that are weird.
I want to discuss this with you.
All
Right
right.
now, it's a discussion. Do you prefer silent or voice protagonists?
I'm gonna say voiced, just because most of the games that I like have done a lot of character building with voice protagonists. And I like a more structured background for characters. Um, but there have been games that I've really liked silent protagonists for, and that's not even just that's not even just for my character, but even like other characters that like you play with that like are just AIs or whatever that kind of just follow you around.
You mean the Marines and Halo?
No, they are chatty Cathys as well, but
But a lot of them just yell stupid stuff.
that's true. I do love the one from what was it? I think it was the third Halo, where it's like tank beats everything. That was so great. But yeah, voice lines from AIs can also be hilarious. But I think I like voice lines better. There's more. I feel like silent protagonists are more meant for serious games, and I do like those serious games. But a lot of the time, I also like a lot of like comedic value.
I also feel like, sorry, I know I asked you this, I'm kind of cutting you off. I also
No,
feel
you're
like
fine.
silent protagonist is better for role playing.
Yes, role playing games I feel like is a lot better for having a silent protagonist. But even a lot of role playing games have voice protagonists.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've obviously got multiplayer, which will just have lines of like what people say. And multiplayer just has to fit the character.
Yeah.
Really, multiplayer doesn't really have much to do with anything, really. It's just like the character is the character. That's how it is. But yeah. So now to move on to actually before we move on to special cases, I'm sorry for delaying everyone. But what is yours then, since you asked me?
I actually prefer voiced protagonists because, like you said, I feel like it just adds more drama into the game. More like you can feel what's going on when everyone's yelling at you and like you're yelling back and all that. And like we're just all this voice talking is going around you. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this. It's me. I'm in the moment and all that. It's just like makes things
Yeah.
more exciting and dramatic.
Especially when there's like the build up music and then your character just says something totally like cool as hell.
Time to give the Covenant back their bomb.
Oh yeah,
That's
permission.
a cutscene.
Yeah, permission to leave the station, sir. For what reason?
To give the Covenant back their bomb.
Such a cool line. Anyway, yeah, if you guys have stuck around this podcast for long enough, you probably know that we really like Halo. So, and so now to get on to the special cases, we have first to start off with is a game that I played more recently. Was Modern Warfare 3, and obviously specifically the campaign. I play a bit of the multiplayer and special ops and whatever, but the campaign was really weird, and it felt really uncomfortable for me.
Modern Warfare 3 by far was the worst. Was the worst Modern Warfare game.
I could see that because I've seen Modern Warfare 1 and 2. I've even played a little bit of both.
I'm doing a playthrough of all three.
You'll have to invite me over so we can play all of them.
I've already beat the first one, and I'm not very far in the second one because I haven't had time because my Xbox 360 is being crap.
Well, either way, you can answer me this question then. Is it the same for Modern Warfare 1 and 2 when it comes to they have just like a weird mix of the characters in the game being both voiced protagonists and silent protagonists?
Modern Warfare 1, you play as Soap, and he is silent the whole time. I'm pretty sure. From what I recall, Soap doesn't say a word. And Modern Warfare 2 might be a mix, but I haven't played much of it, so I don't really remember. Or I don't really know.
Yeah, and then in Modern Warfare 3, Soap is actually talking a good bit. And the same thing goes for Yuri in Modern Warfare 3 as well. Every time you played Yuri, he never spoke a word, but then when it got to the last mission where you played Price instead, both Yuri then started speaking, and then the entire time throughout the game where none of the protagonists that you're playing spoke, Price, who is the character you're playing, all of a sudden spoke as well. So it was a really weird change of pace. and it honestly kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable. But
I
yeah.
do remember Modern Warfare 2, you play as Soap, and he does talk. And it's a mix of both silent. It's like Master Chief. He talks, but he doesn't talk much.
Well, I feel like talking not as much is different between having a mix. Like Yuri was all of a sudden talking quite a bit in the last mission of Modern Warfare 3, whereas the rest of the missions he was completely silent. Even in the ones where Yuri was there, but he wasn't like you weren't playing him. Uh, it made me feel very weird. All right, so now on to our next special case, which is Metro Exodus, which I said we'll get back to later, and now is later. So, so one thing I found very weird, which actually Bryce pointed out to me, I didn't really think about it
You're
before.
welcome.
Yep, thank you. Is is that Artyom, which is the main character you play, he doesn't talk the entire time, but the answers and what people are saying to Artyom and to others seems like it's in response to something that Artyom said, which I never really realized that until Bryce pointed it out to me, and it made so much more sense. I thought it was just that the lines were just really weird, but no, yeah, I don't know why I didn't make that connection at first. But anyway, and then there's also the journal entries that you'll get between missions where you'll actually hear Artyom's voice as well. So it's this really weird mix. And honestly, I think it's cool, but I think the game actually could have been improved if they had Artyom speak.
So another instance in Metro, like you said, is like if they ask you a question and then they answer is like, "All right, I agree." Your character doesn't say anything, so it's like, who the heck were they talking to? It's just really confusing. So this is one of those instances where I think that the game company got lazy and just didn't want to add a voice for him.
I think it's not only laziness. I think it's they tried to make kind of what I said earlier, where it's a power insertment uh, in order to have a silent protagonist versus a voice protagonist. Because I feel like I feel like a lot of Metro Exodus was better with it being silent, but at the same time, I felt like a lot of it would have also been a lot less confusing if he was voiced. But I also can't picture a moment in Metro Exodus um, that he would actually be talking. So
That's a
I mean,
problem.
there's yeah, that is a problem. Uh, and so if they made him silent and then they didn't make the characters respond, I think the game would have been that much better. But I think they're trying a different approach at it. I don't think they're necessarily being lazy because I mean the rest of the game was amazing.
It could have also been related to the book series. I don't know. I haven't read the Metro
Yeah,
series.
I still need to read the Metro series because it was a really good game and I haven't played the other ones,
I was
but
gonna say you should probably play. I think it's Requiem in 2033 or Last Light.
it's
It's
Last
Last Light.
Light, yeah.
I don't know where the heck Requiem came from.
Halo Requiem. All right. Well, anyway, um, so some series have also changed between two games, and a couple examples of this is Dead Space and Bioshock. So Bioshock, in my opinion, I put these two in specific because Dead Space One, in my opinion, like was way better than Dead Space Two, and I think that was a lot to do with uh the character being silent versus voiced because I mean you were just going through these aliens just
Pow
it
pow
made the game a
pow.
bit more I guess scary and immersive.
That was the whole point of Dead. That was the whole point originally.
Yeah,
That was the whole
exactly.
point with Doom.
That was the whole point with Doom. It still kind of is.
Well, the newer Doom, because the old one was all bright and colorful because it was an arcade game.
Yeah, it's true. Um, but and then there's Bioshock, which they actually kind of switched it up. I don't remember what the two different protagonists were, but one of them was voiced and one of them was silent.
The other two, you're playing as Big Daddies. Bioshock 1 and 2, you're Big Daddies, and then Bioshock 2 or Bioshock Infinite, you are playing as Booker DeWitt. So, and if you're in a, I mean, if you think about it, a Big Daddy, I can argue against this one. I truly think that it was better that they didn't add lines because, I mean, I don't really think you could speak that well in a giant, destroying, killing suit.
I mean, Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like both. I think both of them had a. I personally liked Booker DeWitt better.
I liked Booker DeWitt because of the dialogue, but I like the Bioshock 1 and 2 games better.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that's why I mentioned Bioshock is because I think there's a point where could be it is good to switch during mid series, but at the same time, I don't really understand what the switch was exactly. And like I mean, I sort of understand it, but it was also kind of confusing at the same time. And so especially when it's the same protagonist that switches between having voice lines and no lines, that's what makes it very confusing. But I feel like Bioshock did a better job of that. I just don't think they did a better job of communicating the two, or I guess the few games together. So kind of one last point that I want to make that is towards both silent and voice protagonists is that some games I can't imagine being the other way around, which in my opinion makes the game good, or at least adds, or it's just one of those points that you need to have for what makes a game good, that type of thing. And it's just like if it could go either way, where a game could either be a voiced protagonist or a silent protagonist, um, it it would be it's I feel like that's when it would become more bad. I feel like that's more on the bad side. But once again, there's Bioshock, which managed to fulfill having both. But and then there's other games like Halo where I could actually see it being Master Chief being just completely silent, especially given his history. I could see him just being completely silent on the battlefield. But at the same time, I think it makes it a lot better for him to be voiced, especially in Halo 5 when you're with Blue Team, and obviously you need to communicate with your teammates and whatnot. And so I feel like co-op games are a lot like have to do with a lot more, or have to deal with a lot more talking. I think strategy games more so. So this goes for like Rainbow Six Siege or The Division. You don't really need voice lines just for the pure fact that you have the players talking and communicating with each other since they are tactical shooters. So they kind of just don't want to disrupt that with voice lines, which Siege has a little bit of voice lines, but that's a bit different. It's actually just to communicate with your teammates a bit more in the sense that like something significant is happening. Like when Thermite places his breach charge on the wall, he just says like
Thermite going out. I don't know how he sounds, but I know that's what he says.
he says a lot of things. Like he says a really big effing wall coming right up. That's my favorite line. And there's actually a shirt that I really want that says that on it, but um, or a really big effing hole. Did I say wall the first time?
Yes.
I said wall the first time. Okay, I meant hole, not wall. Gosh dang it. All right. Anyway, that's really all I've got to say. Bryce, do you got anything else?
No.
Okay. So yeah. So that's all we really have to say about voice or silent protagonists. We obviously weren't trying to change your mind on whether or not you should like voice protagonists or silent protagonists better. I personally find that some games just is better with a voice and some games are better with a silent protagonist. I really think it depends. And especially what the developers are gunning for is what makes it depend. But anyway, that is all we are going to talk about today. So make sure you check out our website, and also make sure you check out our different social medias like Instagram, Twitter, and Discord. And then also at the beginning and end of this podcast, you will hear DJ Augie, which is the guy standing right next to me, who has made this music. Make sure you check him out on SoundCloud. And also, if you have any questions or any suggestions as to what we should talk about, there will also be an email in the description. So yeah. Anyway, besides all that, game on.